Welcome back, y'all, to another Tim Talks Christian Rock. I'm Tim Risto. So thankful that y'all joined me for another episode here in my interview series where I talk to bands, artists, producers, and others in the Christian rock and metal music scene. Today, I'm really happy to be joined by the gifted multi-instrumentalist and solo artist, PJ Bostic, also known as Paul Roraback. PJ has 4 solo albums to his credit, with a 5th one just out, Hope in the Winter Stage, which we'll be talking about a lot today. If PJ look and sounds familiar, you may know him from his former 90s era band Grammatrain, or perhaps from him having toured with Bloodgood for several years back in the day, or even from his contributions to bands and artists like One Bad Pig, Paragon, Gideon's Press, and Monty Montgomery, among many others. So it is my honor and pleasure to welcome PJ Bostic to Tim Talks Christian Rock. PJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Look at me, I was already correcting you. 5! It's 5 records! You got it wrong! But you knew what you were talking about.
That's right. You were ahead of me.
I should have trusted. You're like, trust my friend.
Exactly. There you go. No, I had to do the count myself too to make sure, but I wanted to kind of build up to that. The new album is out. Let's start with that. This is an exciting album, Hope in the Winter Stage. This is your 5th and latest solo album. It's a great one, by the way. I've listened to it multiple times. Of course, I was able to attend your album launch party here recently. Got to hear you play live, of course, meet you. Loved it. Just absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
So let's start actually talking a little bit about that launch party, first of all, because that was quite an event. You and I talked, I guess, about a week or so before the party, and you were really, very busy getting everything together for that. All the prep that goes into putting together an album launch party. Some people may not realize how much work that takes. So, what can you tell me a little bit about that? What all went into putting that launch party together?
Well, first of all, I'm not a techie person. I just kind of forced into the world of tech in order to do all these things. But just to encourage anybody else out there, maybe that doesn't consider yourself techie, these things can be accomplished by us creative types who do not consider ourselves very left-brained. When you have to do it, you just rise to the occasion and do what you got to do. But so I had 4 or 5 weeks to prepare for this. I wasn't planning on doing anything, and one of the elders of the church, he suggested that we do this, and they were all behind me, and I was like, gosh, they really believe in me, and they really want to do this, and I was just like, okay, let's go for it. So I had to, because I don't have a drummer. Finding a drummer's been the most difficult thing for me, and so I thought, a while back, almost a year ago, I kind of had a vision for just recording the drums myself in here, including on 3MS, which I had a drummer on that record. Normally I play everything on my records, but on the second album I had a band with me and I just played guitar and sang. So I had to record his drum parts, videotape everything, and get it all synced up on the screen with a click, and then rehearse and find a bass player and learn how to work all the live tech into it so that I could project it on the screen and play live and have the click track and all that kind of stuff. And I recently made the jump to the digital world. I've been quite the analog snob for years, and I'm a tone snob. I know that I'm really particular about tone, and I've used amps and mics for years, and I recently made the jump. I got a Fractal, which is kind of a complicated piece of gear. But I was doing that at the same time that I was trying to do all these other things. I had only had my Fractal like maybe 10 days before the show. So I had 10 days to learn it and get all my sounds together. Thus you saw some of the complications we had live there. Like one of them I set up wrong. So I had to
you did amazingly well balancing all that, I have to say. You really did well.
And I surrounded myself with good people too. And that helps.
Yes.
So it was a huge tech, and I just begged God with all my heart and soul, which really has been the path all these years. I really don't think this is just God gave me this ability and I'm just doing what he gave me the ability to do. I don't know where that fine line is.
Yeah.
where am I using the gifts that God has already given me, and
Mhm.
then where is he answering my prayer and giving me a little extra where I need it,
Mm.
but I do
Yeah.
know that he has given me some extra and I have needed it, and I've just begged him for it, and he just kind of kept me moving along. So
Yeah.
again, by the skin of my teeth, I pulled it off. It's kind
You
of how I
did.
roll.
Well, it worked well. It was a joy to be there and to see it. Of course, to hear you playing live again was just so cool. And I thought it all went well. Tell me just briefly about some of the guys that were playing with you that night, because I think you had two bassists, correct? And then your rhythm guitar player, and well, also this is a little bit of a family affair too with this album, which we can talk about in a minute too. But who are some of the fellow musicians that played up there with you at the launch party?
Okay, so Dominic Scarmardo, he's the guitar player, and luckily we had already been working on some songs, and we were planning on doing this, maybe 6 months from now, and we were just kind of dabbling
Right.
with some of the songs and learning them. And
Yeah.
so he was, somewhat prepared when we were hit with like, hey, let's do this in a month. But I didn't
Right.
have a bass player,
Yeah.
and J.R. Taylor and I go way back to
Hmm.
2002, I think is when I met him, and he's always been in my corner. He's from engineered the Illustrated Band album, which is technically Gideon's Press slash the Illustrated Band,
Okay.
and that's really how we got to know each other. And then when I did my solo stuff, he was kind of my ear. I ran it by him, and he really encouraged me. I call him the wolf. He's been there for me just when I have computer problems, or when I need to borrow gear, or whatever it
Yeah.
is, or when I'm just down and depressed. Like, he's just been a really good friend to me.
That's
and
awesome.
uh and so he played bass for a couple of songs, and I had to incorporate him in there somehow. And then Jim Shields was the other bass player. He played on the first five songs, and I've known him for a long time as well. He was in a band with JR, and
Okay.
still kind of is, and he's on the worship team, and he's a really talented bass player, all around great guy, so I just at the
Yeah.
last minute asked him to do it. I don't even think he knew what he was getting himself into, because
Yeah.
he called me afterwards. He's like, yeah, this is you and I play bass a lot differently, and this is going to be difficult, but I'm up for it. So he
Right.
poured his heart into it,
Yeah.
and I thought he did great.
Yeah. Everybody sounded good. It was got it was hard to tell that y'all had a short time to pull it together because y'all sounded really good. I thought it was great, great show. Well, let's talk about that kind of that family dynamic a little bit because in a way, your wife was involved in this album. Your daughter, your son, Coda, got to play
Hmm.
drums at the launch party too, which was really cool to see you two interacting. Tell me a little bit about that. Was that something that was just kind of intentional? You wanted your family to be a part of it, or is that just this culmination of talents that kind of came together?
Yeah, it's both. I wouldn't force anybody into it if they weren't ready or capable. Dana's done
Yeah.
all of my artwork. She did the artwork for Gideon's Press and One Bad Pig and the
Yeah.
Illustrated Band, and she's done all my artwork.
Yeah.
And she's pays a lot of attention to detail, and she definitely makes up where I lack in that regard. And she's much more left-brained than I am. And he's got his own corner in the studio here. He's got his drums back there, and he's got his guitars on the wall. And in fact, he just last night led worship with me for the first time for him. He just, out of the blue, I'm like, hey, dude, Charlie just called me like half an hour ago and asked if I could lead worship tonight for the youth group. You want to play these songs with me? And so he learned them real quick, and just threw them into the fire, and he did great. Got water dunked on him
Good.
by accident. I was holding my water bottle, and they were playing square. What is Foursquare, whatever it's called.
For
The
sure.
and first and the ball goes into my hand, and water drenched him and my guitar that he was holding. And so
Oh no.
I just tried to make the kids feel better by telling them that we knew the dangers of leading worship for high schoolers. when we went into it. So we're good. We're good. It's a
Absolutely.
dangerous thing.
That's right. It's a dangerous job if somebody's going to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
I love
So,
it.
and Ocean wrote some of my lyrics, and she was the
Oh,
voice
yeah.
on my last album. She's the voice on it's kind of the beginning of side two. I never know how to
Yeah.
say it. The title's in Latin. Basically, it's exposing heresies. And
Oh,
she
yeah.
quotes some scripture there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And my son Coda's on the record too. He did kind of a marching snare beat.
Oh,
I
he
overdubbed
did.
him a bunch of times so it sounded like a marching band kind of. And so he's at the end
Oh,
of
cool.
Metaphoric World.
Oh, the end
So,
track. Okay.
mhm.
Yeah. Oh, very, very cool. Well, that's so cool that y'all are all have different contributions on the album. I think that's
Yeah.
really awesome. Well, let's talk about this because here is that album, Hope in the Winter Stage. I love the album cover, love the music, very, very cool. Got it autographed by PJ at the launch party, which is very cool. Also have the CD here too. It is available now on your website, correct? Is that the
Hmm.
best way to order it? Okay.
Yep.
So I'll put a link in the description down below as well as on the screen so people can order it. Tell me a little bit about this new album. What prompted you to write that? Hope in the Winter Stage obviously has this kind of sense of hope amid kind of bleakness, or amid the challenges of life, I guess, the winter stages of life. But what prompted you to that? Was that an overarching theme that you started with, or did that kind of develop from the writing of all the songs?
Yeah, it's every album is wherever I'm at and what comes out. I've got books and books and books of poetry and lyrics, and I always think that's what I'm going to use when I do a record. I'm going to go through those and find some lyrics, but it never really works out that way. I write the music first, and then when I need melodies, I just start singing, and usually just stuff will kind of come out and I'll like where I'm going with it, and then I'll take that and develop it into more verses and choruses and take whatever that thought trail was and make it
Yeah.
rhyme hopefully.
Right.
Sometimes it rhymes. And
Yeah.
it's usually just whatever comes out. Same with the music. It's just whatever happened to be in my head and got sang into my phone, and then it's kind of developed after that. But I've wanted to write for years something more positive than where I had been. Not that it's all negative. There's certainly some positive songs I've written, but I just really wanted to write songs that people could sing while they're cleaning the house or driving down the road that would lift them up. And I feel like I did that on this album. There's some choruses that are more, you can sing them to God. You can just sing them and be joyful. Like Hope in the Winter Stage is about no matter what's going on, whether it's politically, looking at things going on in the world and the country, like God is so much bigger than all of that. And the world seems like it's going through this winter stage, and God is bigger than all of it. And, healing comes tomorrow. We have hope in tomorrow. We have hope in salvation, and we can trust God no matter what we're going through right now. And so that's just where I was at. I was in sort of this state of gratitude and hopefulness, and God had brought in some healing in my own life and just set me free emotionally from some things that were kind of bringing me down. And the timing was just right, and I feel like God gave me something special. It's the first album that I feel like I can say I've been at least as excited, if not more, about the lyrics as I am about the music.
Well, and the lyrics are good too. In fact, I'm going to ask you about some of those in a little bit too. But yeah, I think lyrically and musically, it just meshes really well, along with the imagery. The album, of
Thanks.
course, everybody loves the has to comment on the owl used throughout. I think that's pretty cool too. The wintry owl. I think that's a
Mhm.
neat visual. Did your wife come up with that?
I think so. Well, yeah, because I wanted some of the other, we had several concepts that we were working with. And one of them, I was trying to find a symbol of hope. And the dove kept coming up, but I wasn't going to do a dove. No, no offense to the dove. It's a beautiful thing, but it's been done a gazillion times. And I was not going to
Exactly.
put a dove on my album cover. It's just
Right.
been done too much.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find any other bird or plant or something that would resemble hope. And we actually tried to put the owl on the album cover. We experimented with that, and it just didn't quite. have the effect that we wanted. And while the owl is not universally the symbol of hope, there is something about the winter owl. He survives the winter. He's cunning and he's wise, and he survives. And so we picked the owl and went with the owl. And of course, all my Rush fans think it was inspired by Fly By Night, which is
I forgot
convenient.
about that.
As a Rush fan, it's sort of a convenient thing. But no, it was not
Yeah,
inspired by Rush. It was just trying to find some sort of a symbol of hope and something good in the midst
yeah.
of the winter.
Well, and of course, yeah, the owl and wisdom, biblical wisdom and things like. I think there's a neat connection there too. But I didn't even think of that Rush connection. That's interesting. A couple of songs I want to talk about here. Of course, "Secrets" is a great lead-off track. Great rock and start to the album. A lot of the hooks, of course, a lot of your hooks in general, but just remind me so much of Grammatrain songs too, which you guys had a lot of hooks there too. But I love the great drum, I guess riffs for lack of a better term. I don't know that you have kind of near the end of that song, just that repetitive. Just I love that in Secrets. It's
Thanks.
a great lead off song. Love that. Of course, everybody's talking about I'm Coming Home, the second track, which you got Phil Keaggy,
Hmm.
a solo from Phil Keaggy involved with that. And interestingly enough, your vocals have kind of a Phil Keaggy slant to it. It kind
I've
of
heard
has
that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it really
Honestly, I
almost
don't hear it. I think he's a much better singer than I am, and
yeah,
I think maybe I know what people are hearing. It's just we're not like everybody else. We're a little softer spoken
yeah,
with our vocals and stuff.
right.
So I think I can hear that, but yeah, I was actually the first time I heard that I was quite surprised, and I've since then I've heard it, a few times, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'll take it as a compliment. He's got a great voice.
absolutely.
I wish they would say that about my guitar playing. Then I would really be excited.
Well,
That'll never happen,
yeah, we
and
got to
I'm
give
okay with
props
that.
to Phil. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Got to give props to Phil. Um, I know you talked about with the Area 312 guys about this too, but just briefly, what was it like, collaborating, I assume remotely with Phil, to do the solo, but what was that experience like for you to get Phil on board and just have him participate in part of a song?
I've wanted him on my records for a long time, and
Mm,
it felt right
yeah,
on this song, and I just felt like it was time to ask and reach out, and
yeah,
in my heart, I'm not saying this is prophetic, but I just
right.
really felt like I felt so good about it. I just felt like it was gonna happen, and I've had that happen a couple times in my life, and I was even hoping that's what it was. I was hoping like, gosh, just feels like that time that this happened, and I just felt like it was gonna happen, and it did. It just felt so right. But I just put out a blank like on Facebook, hey, does anybody know how to get in touch with Phil Keaggy? I'd like to ask him something. And luckily, a friend of mine reached out. We actually became friends through this. He was a follower of mine, and he followed me through the years. And so I had sort of a liaison, someone that would go to Phil, who was friends with him, that kind of stuck up for me and asked him if he would do it for me. The funny thing is that I thought I was sending him the song so that he would say yes or no, and then I would send him like professional tracks, with the click and everything lined up. And his answer was he sent me, he said, "Yeah, I'll do it," and whatever. And then he sent me a solo, and he actually sent me six different solos. And
Wow.
it was I was embarrassed because he ended up having to track his own bass track because there was no bass on the solo section. There was just rhythm guitar,
Yeah.
and I hadn't lined it up, or I haven't sent him proper stem files so that he could decide if he wanted more drums or bass or whatever. And I was thinking
Right.
if he said yes, then I would record a bass track for
Right.
him to make it easier for him to know where we're at. And so I feel like I just created all this work for him, and he ended up having to do probably a little more work than usually you would.
Yeah.
And I was kind of embarrassed. I was thinking like, I hope he doesn't think this is what I would send you to have you do a solo on. I just thought, hey, will you play on this song? Great. Okay, I'll send you the stems and then you can do it. But he just sent them back, and
Exactly.
I didn't expect six solos either. He gave me six to choose from.
Six solos.
And
Wow.
yeah, and so
That's amazing.
yeah, and I was
Well,
just so happy with what he sent. And of course I kept all the
oh
solos
yeah,
so I could just go listen to Phil Keaggy and like, hear all the alternative.
absolutely.
Maybe one of these days I'll release one of the other solos as
That would be
a
cool.
bonus thing or something.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be awesome. Well, I suspect Phil, over the years, with all the decades of amazing work he's done and different bands he's worked with, he's probably had to work with a wide variety of different options and things. So I bet he wasn't too put out by it at all.
Yeah, he's probably had to work with tons of incompetence. So I
Yeah.
just fit right in there with
I'm
he's
sure he
he's like, he's
understood.
a drummer. He's a drummer.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm only required to count to four. That's when you're a drummer. That's all this. Don't expect much of me other than I can count to four. One, two, three, four, and that's I can do that.
That's right. That
I'll
probably
mess up
helped your
everything
case.
else.
Yeah, there you go. They'll probably help your case. That's why he's like, I'll send him six. He needs some extra to work with. So, Walking on the Water, which is one I'm going to talk to you about lyrics later on, but that's got to me kind of again some Grammatrain and Rush vibes to it. But I really like that song too. I mean, again, some of these have great hooks. Not Over Yet. It's very Rush-like too. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think if I read somewhere correctly, you do like, or Pink Floyd is a little bit of an influence for you, or
Oh
maybe
yeah,
has been in the past.
sure.
Okay. Because I hear in Healing Comes Tomorrow, that next track, a little bit of Pink Floyd in the guitar. Now, I don't know, again, if that's intentional or some of this just comes through, but it seems like there's a little bit of a Floyd influence there. I don't know. That may just be me.
Yeah. Well, Dave Gilmour is an influence of mine. He,
Yeah.
Dave Gilmour and Kurt Cobain, oddly enough, sort of
Ah,
get a lot of us off the hook in the way that neither one of them are shredders. They're just brilliant, and I feel like Kurt Cobain was, he if he was alive today, he would probably say that he's just kind of an average guitar player, and even Dave Gilmour confesses that he wasn't gifted with shredding, and but
yeah.
these guys have these brilliant minds that have changed the world. And it helped me as a drummer, learning to play guitar. I'm getting better at it now, but it just made me realize you don't have to be a shredder, you don't have to be a show off. If you can create something beautiful and something from your heart and just create something with some passion and put a good drummer behind you, then you can do something great. And I knew I could play drums. And just like Kurt Cobain, man, he had Dave Grohl behind him, just pounding his songs just down people's throats. And I think that really helped Kurt Cobain's songs sound more convincing. The passion he had with his singing, and whether you like what he's singing about or not, he did it with passion and he sold it. And then he had Grohl behind him just, hammering it out. And so I felt like I could do that. I felt like I could give the music something special on the drums, and I don't have to shred. I can just be creative. And so that's where I just love Gilmore, and from a songwriting perspective, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. We'll come back to Cobain in a little bit too. But you talk about now playing guitar and stuff, but really you originated with drums. Although you play all sorts of instruments, but how did drums kind of rise to the top for you early on? Did you and where did some of your desire to play come from? Was that influenced by others around you, by family members, or why did you want to play? And how did drums kind of settle in to be the instrument of choice at the beginning?
Well, I always loved music. I always begged my parents to play. My mom played piano. I'd beg her to play. I wanted to hear her play piano. I loved it when they'd get the records out, which they wouldn't really do very often, but it was a treat when they would get the records out and bust open the record player and play music. It was amazing. I didn't care what they were playing. I just wanted to hear music. And they got me
Yeah.
this little tiny AM FM radio, and I would
Hmm.
take it to the park everywhere with me and listen to whatever was on the radio. And I never wanted to be a drummer. I wanted to be Elton John. I wanted to be up front, piano player, and it wasn't until I was 13, and I think it was a Supertramp video, a logical song maybe, and I was enthralled with the drummer. I just thought it was amazing, and I was asphyxiated. I was just like, this is so cool. And I went to bed that night and I begged God with all my heart to make me a drummer like that guy I saw on TV. And God gave me a gift, and I could not. My parents bought me a snare drum. They couldn't keep me off of it. I played that thing. Before that, I was playing frisbees with paintbrushes, turn on the radio. I'd set up frisbees and whatever was round, and I'd get pie tins out of the cupboard and poke a hole in them and put on the TV antennas and try to
Right.
get them to sit there and dangle, and I would hit those and do all that. And so they got me a snare drum, and I just played and played and played. And then my grandma helped my parents get me a drum set when I was 15, I think. And
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I had something special until I reflected years later.
Yeah.
And I mean, people said you should check out Rush, and I found out that that was a band I had heard a long time ago that I thought was Tom Petty, and I ended up loving Rush. And I even in high school I could play it, and it wasn't until much later that I realized that God really gave me something special, and that to me it was just this band called Rush. I'm going to learn what he did and play it, and I didn't know that I really had something. But my parents gave me a guitar for my 15th birthday. I did not want a guitar. I wanted hi-hats, and I was really angry. I didn't tell them I was angry, but I was
Right.
angry that they bought me a guitar instead. But thank God they bought me that guitar. I didn't play it a lot, but I dabbled, and I really didn't get serious with it until maybe 15, 20 years ago. It's when as the years gone by, I've gotten more and more serious. But now I almost consider myself more of a, well, when I say more of a guitar player than a drummer, I mean I think just where my heart is, I'm playing it more than my drums, and I'm really investing in it, really enjoying it a lot.
Probably nice to
I
do something different too after all the years of drumming
It
too.
is, yeah, it's kind of a fun, different thing to sing and play guitar.
Yeah.
I'll probably never be as good on guitar as I am on the drums. I know,
Yeah.
like I said, God's really given me something here, and I don't want to take that for granted. I'm not going to let go
Right.
of that. This will really always be the drum kit is really where I belong in my
Yeah.
heart. This is just my home. Very
Yeah.
comfortable. Guitar is a little more
Definitely.
difficult. If
Yeah.
you had been there for sound check, you would have seen that firsthand.
I'm sure that's the
Yeah, I
part
blew
that
it.
Beth left not seen. Yeah.
Yeah, I was scared to death. We sound checked, and oh man, I was terrified. I went in the bathroom and got on my knees and I prayed and I begged God just not to let that happen during the show. I was like, okay, God, I see where I end and you begin. I'm humbled.
Yeah. Right.
Please don't let me make a fool out of myself.
Okay, Rush was one of your musical influences. What were some of the other musical influences that you had, or albums that you loved listening to growing up?
So Elton John was my earliest influence.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My biggest singing influence for sure. Elton John.
Okay,
The
yeah,
early stuff, I really loved the early Elton John. Pink Floyd, Supertramp, uh, Rush, Triumph.
yeah.
Um, Pat Benatar, believe it or not, I was a huge Pat Benatar. My
Ah,
first concert was Pat Benatar.
no kidding.
Styx, Kansas. I found
Yeah,
that I like, generally speaking, I like clearer voices.
yeah,
Female like Hart. I loved Hart.
yes.
The exception to that would be Doug Pennick from King's X. I loved
Mm,
King's X.
hmm.
I had his voice had to grow on me, but once I got it, I loved it. When I was in Paragon, we warmed up for their first tour in Seattle, and I didn't know who they were, and so I got their cassette, and I didn't get it because their music has to grow on you. And but then when I saw them live, they were just their energy was ridiculous, and hearing his voice through the PA and just you can feel it in your chest, it was just so amazing. I went back to that tape and I've been a fan ever since. King's X is absolutely amazing. More modern influences is what would be Porcupine Tree, I guess. Honestly, modern music hasn't really had much to offer. I like Dream Theater. um they're I'm trying to think, obviously Yes is in that crowd, in the older, but modern music. I like some of the groove. Fiona Apple and Terry Amos, just because I like just the groove. One of my favorite drummers is Matt Chamberlain, who played on some of that stuff. And so there's like the progressive side where I'm influenced by, Neil Peart, or even just some of the guys like Steve Gadd and Vinnie Colaiuta and Dennis Chambers. But then just the groove, the sweet groove that Chamberlain has, it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
And
Oh, definitely.
if
Yeah.
I acquire his groove, I will feel like I've made it.
You've achieved success. Yeah, there you
He's
go.
amazing.
Let's since we're talking about these different artists and stuff, and you brought up Kurt Cobain earlier too. Let's segue for a second. I'm going to come back to the new album here too, but talk about Grammatrain for a second because talking about Cobain, you guys, well, you helped co-found Grammatrain, and you guys were in that '90s grunge era, and that was the style, that was the sound. A lot of people, checked out who'd come from eras before that, checked out during that era. I still was on board for it. I loved it. I love Grammatrain. I love, I got two of the albums here. I love Lonely House and Flying, of course, two of my favorites. Which those albums, by the way, have been remastered and re-released on, I think it's Girder Records, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly, on both vinyl and CD. Some really nice editions. So I'll put a link in the description down below for those as well. But tell me just a little bit about that era for you. Were you all kind of following in the wake of like the Nirvanas and Pearl Jams? Was this something that just kind of developed? How did Grammatrain come about, and how was it for you living through that era of that sound, developing, being a part of developing that kind of grunge sound?
Well, I'm thankful to my drum students because they're really the ones that are responsible for me seeing the light on those bands. Because I didn't get it at first, especially coming from, Rush, and stuff like that. And I remember I was walking home one day, walking home from the bus, listening to Bad Motorfinger when I
Mm,
got it. I got Soundgarden. I was like, okay, these
yeah,
guys are great,
yeah,
and then the whole Seattle thing opened up to me. But when we started Grammatrain, it was more, Pete and I met, and I didn't know what kind of music we were going to write. And I don't think he knew. And my brother Dalton was living with me at the time. And so we just sort of grabbed him and he was like, hey, you want to come jam with us? And I don't even know if he ever said, hey, can I be in your band? Or we said, come be in our band. We just were like, we just
yeah.
were hanging and writing and we were gigging in no time.
Mm,
And we knew, I remember, I have this vague memory of being in this little basement. The roof is literally right over our heads and we're all cramped in together and it was so loud in there. And we were playing Lonely House. We were writing it and kind of going through Lonely House. And I knew we had something. I was like, the energy in the air and the camaraderie, and there was just something in that room. I was like, this could really be something. So we just immediately started playing, and we were gigging like pretty much every weekend. We rehearsed 3 or 4 nights a week and gigged just about every weekend. So we by the time the labels were checking us out, we were tight, and we had a great, solid live show. We were signed, I believe, like within a year. Like we weren't even together that long,
wow,
and we were signed
wow,
and on the road with Petra and stuff. So we were just kind of thrown right into it. So we were very
wow,
lucky, very, very, very lucky. That usually bands have to be together a lot longer before something like that happens,
yeah.
but the timing was right. We had a good band, and we were the first Christian grunge band to be signed, and so we're kind of carving the way for a lot of the bands that came in behind us and surpassed us.
Well, y'all have a great place in the Christian grunge scene for sure. Just grunge music in general. I think I love those albums in particular, and just think y'all did some great stuff. I know you probably came away as many artists do, and I'm not trying to be disparaging here, but learning a lot about the Christian rock record album studio scene, all of that. What were some of the takeaways for you having gone through that experience? I think you guys were on, again, I'm not trying to name names here, but Forefront Records.
Hmm.
What were just some of the lessons you learned coming away from that? Good, bad, ugly,
Well,
whatever the case.
you know, there's everything. The Christian music scene, it can be really goofy, and you tend to remember the goofy stuff more than the good stuff, and I'm certainly guilty of that. And I'm glad I caught myself because for a while I was disparaged, and I even when I was in Grammatrain, I tended to focus more on the things that the label said they were going to try to do for us that didn't happen than being grateful for the things that they
That did
said they
happen.
were going to do that did happen.
Yeah.
And we we kind of felt like we weren't getting the attention that we needed or deserved. I don't know if we felt like we deserved it, or I think more we just felt like we needed it. We needed more support from the labor. We needed them to be maybe more aggressive in trying to get us on tours with other bands or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
I just have to admit that I took it for granted, and and I was probably more ungrateful than grateful. And
Yeah.
uh, in recent years, I wasn't terrible to forefront. I was a little
Right.
cocky sometimes, but I was trying to protect the integrity of the band, and I was scared. Some of it was out of fear. I was sort of afraid of not losing control of the band. I just wanted to keep our integrity. I didn't want anybody in this
Yeah.
band to sell out. And
Right.
I did. I apologized to I don't know if Dan Brock ever saw it, but I apologized to Dan and Eddie DeGarmo and said, I know there was times I may have came across ungrateful or cocky or whatever, but I really do appreciate what they did for us. And I'm really grateful. And what I would give, we were complaining that when we were touring by ourselves, sometimes we'd have a good show and there'd be 500 or 700 people there. But our average was probably, 200 or 300 or something. And we wanted more than that. And what I would give now to just go play anywhere in the country and have a couple hundred people show up, I mean, that would be really cool. But you
Right.
just take it for granted because your eyes always on something bigger.
Yeah.
And the huge, gigantic, enormous crowds that we could draw all on our own didn't
Yeah.
happen for us. So I think yeah, like disparage is a good word, but bigger things than that happened. I still get letters from people that were changed by that music, and that is so much bigger. And who knows what we would have become if we had sold millions and millions of records. Who knows what kind of people we would have become. Overall, I'm content and peaceful with how things turned out. I like
Hmm.
where my life's at. I love writing this music that I'm doing right now. I feel
Yeah.
very grateful to just sort of have another chance to be doing these things. And there's people that
Hmm.
care about what I'm doing, and I'm still
Yeah.
reaching people. And my family is behind me. My church is behind me, and
Hmm.
so I'm in a good place.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, and God takes us through different experiences for a reason. Like you said, maybe He was protecting you all too from the potential of where fame could have quote unquote fame could have taken you had things gone bigger. But it was the ability for Him to use you all in that time and those moments to sow seeds that took each of you in different directions. But now here you are where you're at today, and I think doing even more relevant things. I mean, this latest album is a great testament to that.
Well, and it shows that God can use you no matter where you're at because we weren't terrible, but we weren't saints either. I didn't even really know that much about what I believed. I read my Bible and I was very sincere about my relationship with Christ, but I don't even think I knew what it meant to be Protestant. I knew I was Protestant, but I think I may have even thought that was a denomination. I was pretty naive to a lot of things. Didn't know
Right.
anything about Christian history, didn't know where my
Yeah.
Bible came from. I knew I loved God and I read my Bible and let's go.
Yeah. Right.
And
Did you grow up in a Christian household, or was that a big part of your family life growing up, or how was that a part of life
it
for
was
you?
kind of lukewarm
Yeah.
Catholic.
Yeah.
I think the foundation that God is real was there because of my childhood, but I misunderstood him, I think, to think he's kind of there to crush me if I do something wrong. And it wasn't until my teenage years that I saw the difference through the testimony of other Christians and through their example of someone who has a relationship with a God who cares about you and actually interacts with you in your life than just kind of being sort of religious. And I'm not saying all Catholics are like this, but just how it was in my family. It was kind of religion, and you just kind of tried to do the right thing so that God wouldn't crush you. I think too many people believe that. It's sort of a cultural
Hmm.
Christianity today.
Yeah.
Just you
Exactly.
just if I'm good, I'll go to heaven, and the
Right.
scriptures are clear that we can't earn it. There's nothing we can do to be good enough to go to heaven.
Not by works, but by the grace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that must have been then challenging being thrown on stage, especially like you said, within a year, you guys were signed to a record label as Grammatrain, and then for you to be kind of held up in this position of, especially back then, a lot of 80s and 90s, a lot of artists were looked at, Christian artists were looked at as almost ministers in a
Mhm.
sense, ministers of music. I'm sure that proved challenging for you being thrown into the spotlight a little bit like that too.
Yeah, and well, lucky for me, I mean, I just felt like I was a facilitator. I felt like, okay, I'm a drummer and I'm a Christian, so what should I do? I'm gonna give my gifts to God. And it started, Paragon and then Bloodgood. I was in Bloodgood and I was facilitating their ministry, and I wasn't required to preach or really know what I was talking about. And so I just felt like, like a secretary at the church or something. You're just doing your part. You're not the main guy. You're not the preacher. You're just helping. And that's, for me, for those years, I felt like that was my role. I knew I wasn't a teacher or a preacher or anything. I still don't consider myself a teacher or a preacher. I'm just a musician, and when I get a chance, I'll share with you what I believe. But I don't know that I want the I don't know that I want the accountability of being a teacher, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you. There's a lot that goes
I want
with that for
I want the
sure.
best of both worlds. I want to go out there and
Exactly.
reach people, but I don't want the accountability.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound like all of us, right?
Yeah, right.
I'll go this far with you, Lord. I don't know if I'm going to go the extra step.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but and he's got you in a place, you're the place where you're at. Like you said, I think you've really been. He's taken you on this journey through the years. You're at a good spot right now. It seems
Yeah.
like, and
And I jest, of
that's what.
course, about the accountability.
Yes, I know.
I
Yeah,
jest, and some people don't always know when I'm joking, and I don't want
yeah,
mean emails. You have to
yeah.
be
Exactly.
accountable if you're going to be a
That's
Christian.
right.
You have to be accountable to somebody. Shame on you.
I'm sure you'll get at least one now. I'll
Yeah.
have to have an extra disclaimer on the screen
Right.
here for that.
They're backing up their message right now. Dang it.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
going to nail him for
Doggone it.
that.
That's right. They
I'm
addressed it. How
watching.
dare
I'm
they?
watching. He's
Yeah,
going to
that's
say
right.
something, and when he does,
That's right,
he's
man.
going to
We
get
are
it.
going to
I'm going to
get
leave a
him.
comment.
The dangers of online. So
Yeah.
true. So let's talk about this here too. Where do you find? I know you addressed this a little bit, but where do you find you often get your creative inspiration from? What moments tend to inspire you, be it either for the writing of the music itself, or lyrics, or album themes, or whatever the case may be.
Hmm. Live concerts, for sure,
Yeah,
inspire me.
yeah.
And it's funny because you would never trace it back to whatever it was that inspired me. I just saw Cheap Trick. I took it's my son's favorite band, so I took him to see Cheap Trick. And the bass
Yeah,
player who plays a 12-string bass, he did this little solo, and it was
yeah,
intimate and it was very, very cool. And that's what inspired, you were at the show, the little before Shadow when I had the double neck, that little instrumental piece I did on
yeah.
the on the 12 string. A 12
12
string
string.
guitar is obviously different than a 12 string bass, but that was
Yeah.
all inspired by that. Just watching him do
Mm.
that, and it was so neat. And I was messing around with my guitar, and it was making me think of that. So I messed around with it, and I was like, "This will be kind of neat," you know. Just so
Yeah.
concerts, of course, music, you know. But I've heard other drummers say this. As a drummer, I feel like my best ideas come when I'm just in here by myself, messing around, and you have your toolbox of your paradiddles and your this and that's, you know. But just playing around, just coming up with things that I haven't heard before that are kind of unique and that are hard to hammer out. So you hammer them out, and um, really, it's just spending time in the music. And, sometimes just listening to genres that I wouldn't normally listen to can inspire me. Pop songs or classical music, even though it's not something I listen to regularly, I'll hear a pop song and there will be something in that song that really inspires me to go in a certain direction with my 10-minute progressive rock songs, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I love progressive rock, so keep going the way you are with that stuff. I love long songs too. I guess coming from my love for Pink Floyd and bands like that too, where whatever time it takes to have that song play out or to musically express yourself, I love that. So, like your last track, is it Metaphoric World? Is that what it
Hmm.
is? Yeah, a 10-minute song, great stuff. How does faith integrate into your creative process? Is that something that you consciously work at? Is that something that just kind of comes natural for you? How is that a part of your creative process?
Well, it's both. Like I said earlier, I really believe with all my heart that God has just answered my desperate pleas for him to give me the ability to do this. When I first started, I was, out here on my face, just begging God with all my heart, soul, and mind. I didn't know if I could write music. I didn't know if I could write melodies. I really didn't know. I had written some music for Grammatrain and some lyrics, but and some other bands, but I'd never written like a full song start to finish, much less sing it. And I sang all the time. I loved singing, but I didn't know if I could sing or not, and I just really didn't know if I had anything, but I wanted to. And my prayer was sincere. It was, okay, God, I can't seem to, as a drummer, every time I would be in a band that would start to gain momentum, there would be a reason for it to end. Usually just the band breaking up or someone quitting the band or um, and so for the drummer, it's hard because if you're a front man, people know who you are. Pete Stewart can go on and have a solo career and people know who Pete Stewart is because he's the front man. But as a drummer, you're starting from ground zero with everybody
Yeah,
else.
right.
And so, I'm getting older and I'm going, it's kind of late to start another band just to have it dissolve in 3 years and then start
Right.
another one and have it dissolve in 3 years. And so even if it meant uh, taking a step back or step down from something I'm very comfortable with. As a drummer, it was sort of a source of self-esteem. It made me feel confident and I knew that I could do my part. I could carry my weight as a drummer. As a
Yeah.
guitar player, I still do feel inadequate, and I was like, okay, God, I'm willing to step away from this and feel inadequate if this is something that you'll bless and
Yeah.
and if I can do something with this, I don't have to have all of this. Throughout the years, just all of the sacrifices I've had to make and the sacrifices my family has to make, it's sort of that same conversation of just, okay, God, I need to know you're in this, and will you bless it if you are? Will you help me? I never know when I'm doing a record how it's going to go. I don't know if I'm going to have the ability to write a record, release it, where am I going to get the money from to put it out there or promote it or anything like that. And God has just been there all the way through. And there's no doubt in my mind that God is in this, and it's because he's shown me through answered prayer like that. He doesn't give me everything I ask for, but with these things, he has used me even despite myself. That's part of it too. I know I'm not worthy of doing this. I know I'm not a super Christian. I don't have any plaques on my wall that make me special in the regard of ministry or anything. But in my heart, I love the Lord, and with this music, I want to use it to encourage others, whether it's preaching to the lost, which used to be what I thought this music was about, and it is. But really, my burden is for the church. I feel like the church is being misled in a lot of different directions. There's false teaching everywhere. And I want to sort of expose some of those things. And I want to encourage people that might be struggling with their relationship with God because, like me, they just feel unworthy. And I just want people to know how much God loves them, and I want to share it through my example as much as I can, being kind of the loser that I am.
We're all losers in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody feels that way. Most of us do anyway.
Yeah.
We have to look at the mirror and we see our darkest thoughts and we know the things we've done. And I mean, who can
Mm,
feel worthy of standing before the Lord? Who can feel
yeah.
worthy of being a servant? I mean, if you
Right.
really feel worthy, like I'd kind of might question, where you're coming from, because
Where your faith is. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Well, until we're
we
brought to that brokenness, right? To where
yeah.
we recognize, we can't do it on our own.
Hmm.
We need God in our life. We need, the grace of Christ. We need that cross to
Yeah.
enter our life and that open tomb to be there. and when we get broken enough to get to that point to recognize that, I think that's where growth really starts to happen. I know it's been the case for me in my own life too over the years, is starting out as a Christian, but then at some point you question things, and in a way that's good, because it either will draw you closer to God, it'll help you to reveal, for God to reveal more answers for you, or it'll take you, another path. But you are brought to that point of brokenness, and that's so much of what it's all about.
And as a perfectionist, which I'm a raging perfectionist, and I'll be the first one to admit that it's not necessarily healthy. I don't know how healthy it is or not, but I just enough people have told me I gotta stop beating myself up, that I'm thinking, okay, there's probably something unhealthy going on here. Um, but so I know I'm hard on myself, and I know I can't be perfect. I know that I cannot observe the law and be perfect. That's not what I mean by perfectionist. I at least want to be the best that I can be before the Lord or in my music or whatever. But I do think being a raging perfectionist does make it harder for Christians who tend to focus on their flaws, and that's where God just has to use me despite myself, and I have to just, maybe I don't always feel this way, but I know, I have the knowledge that God doesn't see me that way. God doesn't just sit and look at all my flaws and focus on them the way that I tend to do,
Right.
so.
Exactly. Excellent point. Well, and that kind of brings me to this point here. I love this line from Walking on the Water here on your new album, where you say, "Show me how to find escape when sadness accumulates. Help me to endure the weight when hardship is making me stronger. I'm walking on the water." I know you mentioned in between songs, at the launch party, you've struggled in the past with anxiety and depression. How has your faith, that relationship with Jesus, helped to be a healing element for you and draw you, through some of those things? Or maybe still those may be ongoing challenges, but how has your faith in Christ helped you to move through all that?
Well, for starters, the depression, which I didn't know was depression for years, and I shied away from calling it depression because it seemed a little trendy to, like, everybody's got depression now, and but I finally had to admit that's what it was, and I'll just give you the short story. God just healed me of it on the spot, and there's just no doubt that's what He did, and doesn't mean I don't get depressed. In fact, just yesterday, I had to just go lay down. I had to get on my face and I had to pray. All of my responsibilities, this is how I put it to my wife, they were spinning around my head at the speed of light, and it was just sort of funneling me into this state of depression. So I knew what was causing it. It's not
Yeah.
like before where I would be depressed for no reason. But I just spent some time before the Lord and prayed, and He took care of it. And so, but the anxiety is still here, sadly. I don't take medication for it anymore. I used to have panic attacks and stuff. And I hated that I had to take medication for it. It really bothered me. And I was praying about it. I'm begging God for healing, which He still hasn't. But I just took it upon myself to eat healthier, think healthier thoughts, um, and uh, I watched videos online of just how to control your anxiety and that kind of thing. And I think part of it is it's just overcoming some of my, I guess, insecurities helped me with some of the social anxiety. But and I still take that to God, when I'm feeling it. It's just sometimes that anxiety is just there for no reason. It's a very chemical feeling. It's there, and I'm anxious. I feel like I'm in trouble for something, or I feel like something bad's going to happen, but I'm not in trouble, and nothing bad's happening. Everything's fine, but I just still have this anxiety. I'm just anxious, and sometimes it's better than others, but at this point I'm just refusing to take anything for it, and I'm doing okay. I haven't had a panic attack in a long time, and I don't think I will again. I can see him coming now, and I know I'm not having a heart attack. I know I'm not having a
Yeah. Yeah.
stroke. I just
Right.
breathe and pray, and I'm okay.
Well, continued prayers for you on that journey too. I know it's an
Thanks.
ongoing thing. So, may God be with you on all that, you and the family for sure. And it certainly seems like, God's gotten you a great place with your church and everything. Your church family there seems really awesome as well. Have you found that the writing process is kind of cathartic for some of these things, whether it's anxiety or just dealing with different things in your life? Is that something that helps you, be it either the music or the lyrics that helps you through some of these things?
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that the lyrics and the music are kind of a result of the anxiety and the depression. It's those emotions and those tough things that have caused me to pick up my pen, or have caused me to pick up my guitar, and just pour myself into these things. I think it's been sort of an escape, healthy or not. It it's an escape. If I'm upset, before I go to bed, I just pick up my guitar and play it for a while, and it relaxes me. And um, the daydreaming that comes along with being a songwriter and musician, just or the pondering, where I want to go with my music or what I want to do, or pondering the deep thoughts of theology, and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. Uh,
absolutely.
and I have to admit too, there's anxiety that comes from that too. The things that I see, it's like just kind of being vexed or being. I just in scripture this morning, what was it? Was talking about someone that was one of the prophets that was literally like tormented by
Mm,
the lifestyle of the people that he was living with, and how it just tormented him.
mm, yeah,
And I'm not saying that's me, but
right.
I have felt like I'm a little too bothered sometimes by bad
Sure.
theology, and sometimes I
Yeah,
gotta tell myself to relax, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And if I can't act out of love, I just need to keep my mouth shut, and so I often do. Just
yeah.
keep my mouth shut.
How we could all take a lesson from that
Yeah,
sometimes, right? Sometimes we just want to be heard, but sometimes there's, sometimes God's children should be seen and not heard, right? So
yeah, yeah.
sometimes there's a little of that going on too. But it's interesting to hear about your journey so much. This new album, "Hope in the Winter Stage," is just such a great album. I'm loving it.
Thank you.
I've listened to it several times. Highly encourage viewers and listeners to go out and pick this album up. It is just great. It's got, I think, obviously your own style, but of course everybody likes to compare things. So of course it's got Rush influences. It's
Hmm.
got, like I said, I think some Pink Floyd. I hear Grammatrain in here, just all sorts of great stuff. But it's this neat amalgam that is so much you, so much PJ Bostic. Highly encourage people to run out and pick this up. It's a great, great album.
Thank you.
I got to show off the vinyl quick here too, because this is just a gorgeous looking vinyl. I showed it to a few people, but it is just, I don't know if you can see it really well, but on camera, but it is a gorgeous vinyl. Love the Snowy Owl, great stuff. Fantastic album. So obviously the album just came out. What's kind of the future going forward from here for you? Anything coming up here? Performances? Additional things related to the release of the album? Tell me what's ahead for you.
Well, I want to do more live shows, so
Yeah.
I'm I'm going to, kind of figure out what songs we want to do, and I've got to record all the drum tracks for those, the
Yeah.
video to get all the tech worked
Right.
out for that. I'd like to play some festivals. I'm hoping to get in some festivals, and
Yeah.
I want to reach out to some of my comrades out there in bands if they're coming through Texas. I'd like to get on the bill, some of those guys. And of
Yeah.
course, there's the Immortal Fest coming up. I'm playing drums for Triton now,
Triton.
and
Yes.
so
Awesome.
they just Larry just sent me a set list recently, and that there might be another little medley in there, a little surprise for everybody that went over
That
so
would
well
be
last
so
year.
cool. Oh yes,
So
there was I think a rush one last year, wasn't there?
yeah,
If
I
I
think we're
remember
kind of
correctly.
committed from now on to do something like that. So
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. That'd be
yeah,
awesome. I've been talks to interview Larry here coming up soon too. So looking forward to that. He's a great guy though.
he's just a blast to talk to. I sort of compare him to John the Baptist, because you can't hang out with him without him talking about Jesus. His whole everything is just about
Yes.
Jesus and about his ministry, and he just goes and go. I don't know where he gets his energy, man.
Oh,
I'd
I
like
was
to
gonna
all
say
have
same
what he's
that.
having.
Yeah, exactly. That he does. He just got that infectious kind of energy that just within a few minutes, if you're down in any way, you're uplifted right
Yeah,
away. So
yeah.
he's got that too. Well, and I should mention too, of course, you did perform with One Bad Pig on this album here, which this one was what's the title? Oh yeah, Love You to Death. That's right, which is also a great album. I think that was One Bad Pig's last album, if I
Hmm.
recall correctly, at
Yeah.
least to date. But I know you mentioned, was it Paul that was at the launch party as well too?
Oh, Daniel.
Oh,
Daniel
Dina, okay,
Tuchek was there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that's cool that you guys still keep in touch. Of course, another great
Yeah.
Austin band. We need more Christian rock bands here and down
I know,
south.
right?
Yeah,
We
it'd
got
be really awesome.
a good festival going on down here.
Yes, exactly. We need like an Immortal Fest down
Hmm.
south. I think that's what's missing right now. Well, anyway, PJ, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and chatting. I just had a blast talking with you. It's been so cool to hear your story a little bit more in depth, talk about your music. This is a great album, of
Thank you.
course, and just God's blessings on everything for you,
Thanks.
musically and with your family and your church life. I know you're playing in the praise band there too. So God's using you in a number of ways, and it's just great to see that. And I'm inspired by your work, by your music, by your lyrics, and by seeing your faith too in action. Just hearing you talk at the launch party, too, in between tracks was really cool and inspiring for me. My wife was touched by a lot of what you said too. So
Awesome.
you're having an impact. You're touching lives for sure through music.
Thanks. I appreciate that encouragement, man. It's an honor to be on your show. It's an honor to be used by God the way He's using me. I just again, I'm not worthy. I'm glad He sees something in me that He can use, and I'm just gonna try not to blow it, you know. So my friend Sammy Palermo always used to say that to me. I was like, "Is there anything I can pray for?" You know, he's a pastor up in the
Yeah,
Northeast up there. He'd
yeah.
say, "Just pray I don't blow it." I'm like, all right.
I may have to adopt that prayer myself. That sounds like a good
Hmm.
one. Awesome. Thanks, PJ, so much. God bless, and I look forward to listening to more of Hope in the
Awesome.
Winter Stage. Great album,
Thank
y'all.
you.
All right,
Thanks
take
for
care.
having me. All right.
Yeah, you bet. Great to have you on.